Defense forces of Ukraine continue to systematically strike military targets on Russian territory. Ukraine has chosen an interesting strategy that is creating problems for the enemy. Military observer Ivan Tymochko told Channel 24 about this, noting that Ukraine has chosen a strategy of finishing off enemy targets. This is clearly evident in the attacks on oil refineries. Defense forces continue these strikes until the facility is shut down. As Tymochko noted, the defense forces are attacking the oil refining and aircraft manufacturing industries, which are strategic for the enemy's military-industrial complex. For example, oil refineries produce more than just oil. They also produce fuel, rubber, oil, and bitumen, which are used by other enterprises supplying the Russian army. Moreover, strikes on such targets cause problems in the political and economic sectors of the aggressor country. This leads to internal conflicts. Although the security bloc exerts considerable control over Russia, in such cases, each side tries to protect its own interests. The Russian military understands that as long as the war continues, they're in the saddle. They're forgiven for crimes, looting, and so on. There are economic elites who finance the war. They're losing profits. This is probably the first time since the start of a full-scale war that we've seen a dissonance, albeit subtle, in the interactions between the Russian elites, said Tymochko. Recall, Ukrainian forces are systematically striking Russian air defense systems across hundreds of kilometers. After months of preparation, Kiev's strategy is now fully visible. Destroy radars, launchers, and control modules until the skies are open and air superiority is established. These attacks span thousands of kilometers, but share a clear operational goal of systematically dismantling the infrastructure that keeps the air defense network functional. By knocking out early warning radars and central coordination modules, Ukrainian forces create time gaps in detection and response while effectively blinding connected missiles. By destroying intercept launchers with their own radar and control module built in, such as the Pantsir or Bucha systems, they undermine Russia's ability to patch holes in their layered defenses. By finally targeting systems like Barnolti, which coordinate radar data, firing orders, and even external assets, they sever the entire command structure and ability of the Russian network to work together. The more fragmented Russia's air defense grid becomes, the more exposed its rear area is to follow-up strikes from Ukrainian bombers, drones, or cruise missiles. And in rare cases, Ukraine has used their fighter jets for complicated set and dead missions to suppress or destroy enemy air defenses. The range and variety of these tools show that Ukraine is no longer just improving. It is executing a coordinated, multi-domain campaign to disable Russian air defenses. From Krasnodar Krai to Kursk, Ukrainians are striking Russian air defenses and creating a kill zone up to 300 kilometers deep into Russian-controlled territories. Overall, Ukraine is not just blinding Russian air defenses, it is taking apart the system that makes them effective. A wave of sabotage has recently erupted across Russian-controlled territory and deep inside Russia, revealing a level of underground resistance that Moscow has struggled to contain. The outburst along the front began with a series of sabotage attempts that show how close Ukrainian partisans now operate to Russian units, Euromaidan press media outlet says. The clearest example comes from Melitopol, where resistance fighters tried to detonate a vehicle carrying a Russian drone crew as they prepared for operations. The attempt failed, but it set the tone for what followed. In Luhansk, explosives planted under 2 Russian vehicles detonated with far greater effect, killing 4 soldiers and underscoring how deeply partisan networks have embedded themselves in Russian-controlled settlements. At the same time, Ukrainian infiltrators in Crimea recorded fighter jets taking off from Saki airbase, giving Ukrainian intelligence real-time visibility into Russian flight patterns. These incidents differ in style but share the same message: that partisans are active at all hours, able to move close to Russian forces, and increasingly confident in targeting frontline logistics and surveillance assets. Euromaidan Press claims, now the effect becomes clearer when looking at how these operations shape the front, as partisan attacks are rarely filmed, yet the number we do see already suggests a much larger scale beneath the surface. Every damaged vehicle or destroyed command node forces Russian units to pull infantry off the line and divert them to guard duty, convoy escorts, route sweeps, and constant patrols inside Russian-controlled towns, adding daily friction to already strained manpower and increasing the chances that more attacks will slip through. Meanwhile, partisan intelligence gathering, such as recording aircraft departures, feeds Ukrainian strike planners with information that would otherwise require riskier reconnaissance flights. These networks identify troop movements, storage sites, and locations of electronic warfare systems, creating a constant background of uncertainty for Russian forces operating in areas they considered secure. Euromaidan Press reports. At the same time, a new pattern is emerging far beyond the front, where sabotage inside Russia has increased sharply. In the Kursk region, a combined operation between Ukrainian special forces and the partisan group destroyed an Iskander transport loading vehicle used to prepare missiles for launch. A separate strike in the same area took out a Harmonia radar supporting local air defense units. In Bashkortostan, arson attacks destroyed multiple communication towers, while in Vologda, a railway relay cabinet was taken out, disrupting traffic along a key route. In another wave of incidents stretching from Moscow to Irkutsk, electrical panels, relay boxes, and railway infrastructure were set on fire, with local officials describing the incidents as unexplained technical failures. The most serious case came near Moscow, where infiltrators blew up sections of the Ring oil pipeline. The strike put all 3 fuel lines out of service, affecting gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel supplies to several major refineries and forcing Russia to send emergency repair teams across the region, Euromaidan Press says. Now, the broader effect within Russia is harder for Moscow to ignore. The spread of sabotage from Moscow to the Urals mirrors the growing anti-government mood in separatist circles. But here, the motivation is not independence, but direct opposition to the war. These are Russians who take personal risks to attack their own state, still limited in number, but appearing with increasing frequency. Their involvement turns isolated incidents into a political signal, showing that resistance is no longer confined to Russian-controlled Ukrainian territories, but is emerging inside the Federation's heartland, forcing the security services to defend a rear that is no longer reliably loyal. The surge in partisan and sabotage activity marks a shift in the internal pressure facing Russia. Along the front, resistance groups are disrupting logistics, collecting intelligence, and forcing Russian units to divert manpower away from combat. Euromaidan Press reports. In the deep rear, strikes against railways, communications, and energy infrastructure expose structural weaknesses that Moscow cannot secure without further stretching its forces.